and do whatever we like. The second barrier is that there has been no occupation in history that presented itself as a victim, like what Israel has been doing these days. And this also has enabled Israelis to live in peace with the idea of occupation. We are victims, so we don't care about others. And the third barrier is that, and this is the most dangerous one, is the systematic dehumanization of Palestinians. And this also enables Israelis to live in peace with the idea of occupation, because if they are not human beings, then why do we care about their human rights if the issue of human rights exists altogether? If such a set of barriers exist, do you think it is possible to find agreements in the future without some substantial education to change the minds and the beliefs and the values? Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of OIC. Any other questions or comments? I can see some hands, 4 hands going up at the back. Any other hands there? 1, 2 there. So we stop at that. I think we have plenty. We have 6. Huh? Khams? Yeah, already you said 6. So 2 from there, 4 from there. We start perhaps from you, sir. Yeah.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président de séance.
Chair, thank you very much. I would like to begin by making a few comments. When we look at the Israel-Palestine issue, the first thing that comes to mind is that most people think, or many people think, it's a religious issue, but this is not the case at all. A Palestinian can be Arabic or non-Arabic, Catholic or Muslim. Now, to speak about geopolitics, you have, the microphone is cutting, the interpreter's having difficulties. Sorry. So.
And we can hear you.
Okay.
No, you got cut now.
Vous avez
That's better. Yeah.
des Arabes.
There are Arabs, and I'd like to say a word here to all the Arabs in the room here. When you have enemies in politics, what do? They jump at each other's throats and kill each other off. What you need to do is wait and let them kill each other off. You just sit back and wait.
So can you use another mic? There's something wrong with that.
Voilà.
I was saying that when you look at the Arabic people as a whole, they're doing exactly what theory dictates you should do when you have a lot of enemies. In other words, they kill each other off and you just sit back and wait. You have the Shiites and the Sunnites on the one hand fighting with each other. They all are of the same origin, but they've forgotten that. Then you have the Islamists who say they're pious, the miscreants, they're the unbelievers, they're the crusaders, there's Al-Qaeda against Daesh, Muslim brotherhood against the others. That's one side. Then on the other side, what do you observe? You see politicians. You see a political system where, with proportional representation, it is small minority groups that create the political system and not the majority. And then in the middle, what do you have? And I think we tend to forget, who is Benjamin Netanyahu? We seem to have a lot of expectations of him. I certainly do not. As far as I'm concerned, as long as he's prime minister, there's only one thing he will remember throughout his entire life: his brother who died at Entebbe, the Entebbe raid, Jonathan. He will never forget him. And as long as he is in power, this is how he shall continue to behave. So the conclusion I draw from all this, I take it from the famous dialogue of the Malians, where we read, the strong do as they wish. The weak do what they need to do until such a time as they can be mobilized and become strong. So let me turn to all the people in the Arabic world and say, how many people, how many Arab countries are really working for the benefit of the Palestinian people? As the Anglo-Saxons say, stand up and be counted, and we shall see.
Thank you, sir. We take one more question from there, we go back there, and then we'll come back there. Yes, sir, you have the floor.
Je vous salue tous.
My greetings to all. Mr. Dawda Fai, coordinator of the Solidarity Action Association of Friendship and Solidarity Amongst Peoples here in Senegal. I would like to congratulate you for the quality of the presentations that we've heard. All the speakers were of the topmost quality, and I really must say this has been a wonderful place of learning for us here today. I'm a pedagogic person, and I appreciate that dimension of the contributions that have given us a better understanding of the struggle of the people of Palestine, which is also our cause. To defend this cause is for us already a battle won. So please be assured of our active solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Ousmane Diadou. Je fais partie.
My name is Ousmane Diallo. I am a part of an adult education literacy program. I have 3 questions and then a comment. The first question pertains to allegiance to the state. If Judaism is the religion of the state of Israel, who's paying allegiance? Does it mean they have to change their religion? That's the first question. And then for the Palestinian peoples, these are biological human beings. If a Palestinian or an Israeli wishes to get married, what does the state do about that if they wish to marry each other? Then I have a comment. In Montreal, and it's really rather strange, on every Friday, from 11 to midday, Palestinians and Israeli face off. Every Friday, there's a face-off to say this happened, that happened, and so on. Whereas these are states, 2 states. These are people who are immigrants in Canada, and yet every Friday they demonstrate. One side is Palestinians, the other side is Israelis, shouting at each other. And one thing I've observed is that the Israelis are the only peoples in the world where, wherever they go, they have their own schools. These are schools which, if they could, they would set up republics within the states where they are. My question is, well, I would have liked to hear from the embassy of Iran, to have heard a speech from that ambassador. Thank you.
Bonjour.
Thank you, sir. Okay, madam. Yeah.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon. My name is Madam C. Mariam Njai, President of the Women Islam and Development Association, member of the support community for the state of Palestine. I would like to congratulate this conference and would wish to have many more of such. As a woman, I must say I've been very touched by some of the testimonies, and my concern is about children who suffer, children who are traumatized, who no longer go to school. And as people recognize, children are the hopes of tomorrow. So my question is, what is their future going to be for these children? Thank you.
Thank you, madam. And then we go back there. Yes, sir, you have the floor.
My name is Sharif Mbalo. I'm coordinator of the Palestine Committee of Senegal. We had the honor of organizing demonstrations, pro-Palestinian demonstrations in favor of the oppressed peoples of Palestine. We've been doing this for the past 25 years. They have been oppressed for the past 25 years. May I say, for the benefit of those who are listening, that Africa has a debt towards Palestine. The great combatant, freedom fighter, Nelson Mandela said that the freedom of Africa will never be complete until Palestine is free. And تحرير فلسطين
تكتمل إلا إذا تحررت فلسطين. Et comme vous le savez également,
as you were aware, the only state in the world which is currently under colonization is Palestine. We need to make a distinction also between Jews and Zionists. There's a difference. Not every single Jew is a Zionist, and not every single Zionist claims to be belonging to believe in Judaism. So it's a political theory. What I'd like to remind everybody of is that in a fortnight, less than a fortnight, we're going to have, on the 15th of May next, Nakba commemoration. And already, it's 68 years since Palestine has been under occupation. And it is at the core of the crises in the world, not only the near and the Middle East, but the global crisis. And we have to constantly remind people that there can be no lasting solution in the Middle East until the Palestinians have a state which is their own. And in other words, what I'm saying is that there will be no peace, no true peace or stability until the inalienable rights of the Palestinian peoples are respected. Palestinians were deprived of their land by force. This is an injustice that the Zionists of Israel have imposed on the people of Palestine. This must come to an end if you want peace to reign on the martyred land of this part of the world. In whatever the case may be, Palestinians, supported by people who love peace and justice, will spare no effort to ensure that justice is done, justice does prevail, and the potential danger of the Zionist usurping state of Israel shall be eliminated in this part of the world. Now, after 68 years of aggression that has been felt by these people, what the world needs more than everything else is the divine promise.
Get to the point, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So can we have the last comments, please be brief?
أختتم. Donc, ce que je voudrais...
What I wanted to say is that despite the indifference that a lot of political leaders of the Ummah, the Islamic Ummah, are showing, Palestine shall be free soon.
Merci beaucoup.
Yes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Chair, thank you for giving me the floor. My name is Musa Bastibou Diallo. I'm in charge of a program at the NGO that's called Akapis. We work here in Senegal, have been doing so since 1972 in training, education, youth in disadvantaged circumstances. As a member of ECOSOC, we did participate in implementing certain recommendations aiming at Palestinian return to its land. And this enabled us to visit the Shatila and Shabria camps. We would like today to thank you for having invited us to this major conference. We also would like to thank everybody who has made the contributions here today. When one carries out a comparative analysis, one realizes that the presenters had said a lot that is very seductive, but at the same time it's very traumatizing. When we hear that you travel with and you carry a Jordanian passport in your own country, when I hear somebody who says that he was prevented from going back to his own land, he's not even able to have the nationality that is his, he's not able to live properly on his own land, I think it's really alarming. Despite all the resolutions that people are busy adopting within the United Nations system, the solution is far from being a tangible reality. As one of the representatives here said today, in 1974, there was the Palestinian people are now 500,000 in the land of Israel, and I think there's only one thing we must do. We NGOs have to carry out offensive, state diplomacy so that we have stronger resolutions in the United Nations system. And as somebody here said, it's really we need to see Arab countries participate and contribute. When I hear someone saying that the funds they are waiting for from the Arab states have not been forthcoming, and yet these are the funds that enable them to live, we're told, enables them to fight. I think there's an issue there we should ask ourselves questions about. Secondly, my question is, how is it that the United Nations can actually enforce these resolutions? There's a very strong coalition.
It's taken. Thank you very much. So when we come back to the panel, I'm afraid I have to give 2 minutes to each speaker here. There were a host of issues raised in here: Israel's moral blindness, the need for the unity of Muslims and the unity of Arab world, and also the allegiance to state and the future of children and the lack of implementation of the Security Council resolutions. So please, 2 minutes each.
سأختصر كثيرا. نحن
on the West Bank or in Jerusalem or in Palestine, we are a state under occupation, and the international law is clear in this respect. The transfer of a citizen from a place to another, that's considered to be a war crime according to the Fourth Geneva Convention. What is happening on the West Bank, especially in East Jerusalem, is a violation of all these laws. Israel has set all these international laws on the one hand, and it enforces its own law, the law of power. We in the city of Jerusalem, we reside, considering that in the year 1967, number of citizens of Jerusalem were 70,000. We entered the country as tourists, hence the Israeli party has been generous enough to provide us with permanent residencies. So if you would like to obtain the Israeli passport, you have to pledge allegiance to the state, and your access into the country means that you are no longer a person under occupation, but you are part of the system. That is the problem. The Hebrew state has occupied Jerusalem and the West Bank. Consequently, I have to pledge allegiance and loyalty to that state in order to obtain citizenship. As for marriage, we don't have a problem. We Muslims, it is permissible for a Muslim man to marry a Jewish woman, but according to the Jewish religion, descendants of a Jewish woman become Jewish, which is another problem. The Arab world has many problems, not only between Sunnis and Shiites. There are other problems. That problem between the Sunnis and the Shiites, ISIS and others, that's a totally different problem. Each Arab country has its own set of problems, and we believe that Condoleezza Rice, when she spoke about the new Middle East, she meant by that the creative Middle East. The U.S., when it created problems in the Arab world and liquidated Iraq, followed by Syria and Yemen, this was with the sole purpose, namely the persistence of the Hebrew state. This has nothing to do with Sunnis and Shiites, but it has to do with the colonial strategies that are present in the region to keep the Hebrew state as a bridge towards the new modern colonialism in a new appearance and a new guise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sidman. Sorry, Mr. Sidman, you have the floor.
Very briefly, and I'd like to begin with the comment on the psychological barriers. I agree with every word you said on the diagnosis. I disagree with some of the descriptions. I think that there are major psychological barriers. Not all of them are pathological. 20–30% of Israel think that the Jewish people are the chosen people, but 70% don't. We're not chosen, we're scared. And some of our fears are justified, and many of them are irrational. And we have to deal and treat the irrational fields and address the rational ones. Yeah, there are pathologies. When a settler in Hebron, and Hebron, for those of you who have not been in Al-Khalil, is the most toxic occupation on the planet. It looks like an insane asylum. When the settlers consider themselves to be victim, you're talking about pathology. But when parents fear for their kids getting on buses, it's a fear. The head of Israel's opposition came out with a statement recently. You can tear your hair out. She's apparently going to be the next head of the Labor Party, maybe. Shelley Yachimowicz. Israel isn't occupying the West Bank. My kids do reserve duty in the West Bank, and they're real nice. Duh. What are you talking about? Good manners, trumps occupation? Yes, we are dehumanizing. And we're dehumanizing one another. It works on both sides, and it's not entirely symmetrical, and I don't compare between the occupier and the occupied. Can we recover from this? I can give you a slew of stories. I'll give you one. 100 years ago today, 1916, my grandfather was a soldier on the Western Front in the German army. 80 years ago, my 12-year-old father would go home via the alleyways of Breslau in order to avoid being picked up by the SS or beaten up by the Hitler Jugend. I, once, twice, 3 times a year, go to the German Foreign Ministry, go to the Chancellor's office. I go in and I meet with the State Secretary, who tells me this office was the office of Hermann Goering. This is a Nazi building. And the Germans are at peace with Israel, are reconciled, and they are not enemies of the Palestinians. I think that they can do more. If we stop believing in the ability of the human spirit to regenerate itself, let's just pack our bags and go home. But I can show you dozens of examples about how that happens. In order for that to happen, we have to end occupation. There have been periods in our history when occupation wasn't so bad. It wasn't great. It was never good. It was always occupation, but it was a disease in remission. Today, occupation is not a disease in remission. It's metastasizing. It's aggressive. It's destroying Rami's society. It's also destroying my society. And that touches on one of the questions about Israel as a Jewish state. There are today, and there will be in the future, Palestinian citizens of Israel. It is possible to be an Israeli and a Palestinian, not to be Jewish. And that's not only a question of entitlements, it's a question of identity. The Palestinian citizens of Israel are entitled to live lives as Palestinians with the entitlements of Israeli citizenship. It's flawed, but even that is becoming endangered by importing occupation to Jaffa and to Nazareth and to Wadi Ara. I promise you one thing. When Ambassador Mansour will be successful in bringing about a two-state solution, and note that I'm saying not if, when. There will be a border in Jerusalem. It's not great, but there's going to be a border. The day that border goes up, the day the border will begin to unravel. And you will see a meeting of equals among Israelis and Palestinian, Jews, Muslims, and Christians that will be an inspiration to the world. But it can't happen under occupation.
Thank you, Mr. Sidman. Mr. Al-Kurd, you have 2 minutes for your final comments.
As I've said, I am not an expert. I don't understand politics. But from what I have endured in Jerusalem and what I've heard from those around me and those who understand politics, as the first speaker before Mr. Seidman said, I don't have any experience in politics, but as what was said by Mr. Seidman, his grandfather was in Germany, and most Jews were outside of Palestine at that time. But there were Palestinian Jews who were coexisting with us peacefully without any conflicts between us until Zionism reached Palestine and have a stronghold there in support, supported by Britain, which has deprived us from living in our state. 1948, it has devised several means, such as the massacres of Deir Yassin and others, in order to expel us out of our homes. And ever since, the Israeli methodology persisted and has been treating us that way. The Israeli left is in solidarity with us, but if you dwell into a deep conversation with them, they would say that we wanted to keep the home I am living in, although it had Palestinian residents before me. So most of them, they understand the situation, that we were there first. Zionism, which wants to obliterate Palestine, the Palestinians, and any supporters of them. What I ask states is to know how to harm Israel, for them to remember that on their side, by their side, there is a Palestinian who's been living on this land. By boycotting them, for example, not importing products produced in settlements, for example, built on our own lands, to not provide them with arms, with funds, in order to put an end to the executions that take place every day in Jerusalem, Hebron, and others, and are documented all over the world. Up till now, we have not seen any decisive, strong stand that